Hello and welcome to another episode of Leader Generation brought to you by Mata. I'm your host, Tessa Burg, and today I am excited to welcome Alex Seidita. He is the Chief Information Officer at Aspida, and he has spent 35 years in IT leading projects, including data warehouse projects, through large technological shifts. And we're excited to learn more about his background, what this has looked like at companies like Citibank, Home Depot, even in the military. And it's fascinating because we were just talking about this before the call that AI is no more than another technological shift. And it really is the people and the processes that we bring to the table that will help determine how successful we are in navigating this shift as well as shifts in the future. So, Alex, thanks so much for joining us. I am really excited and looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Tessa. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well.
So let's get into your very big and varied background. And you were saying, like, you started in computer
Yep.
science and how that really gave you the foundation to navigate these technological shifts in different industries, payments, insurance, CPG, and retail. I mean, these are wildly different industries, but all have gone through and had to navigate when major platforms and new technologies are introduced, how that impacts everything from back of house to front of house. So tell us a little bit about where you started and what that journey looks like.
Thanks, Tessa. I have used the blessing of computer science, which was what I went to school for, across a variety of industries. I find that the problems, irrespective of the specific industry, a lot of times at the core are the same. And you just got to bring people together to collaborate. So I started in telecom. I did terrestrial, cellular, and satellite telecom. I'm sure all of our viewers here have cell phones, and I was at Motorola back in the 90s when we were developing CDMA, which is a core technology, which is the foundation of cellular technology in the United States. I also spent time with Citibank, both as a contractor and then as a full-time associate, working on data warehouses, credit card analytics, and so forth. I did spend a stint in military avionics, working leading a software engineering team on Army helicopters and F-22 jets, which was a very interesting experience as well. And then I also was with the Home Depot for about 8 years. I started building data warehouses for sales, inventory, and labor information to make the company more efficient in all of those areas. And then became the head of data architecture, eventually the chief architect of the company. I ran IT services, developer tools, data center, distributed infrastructure, and so forth. Um, and then from the Home Depot, I went to First Data Corporation, which actually got me more into not just the kind of scale like we had at the Home Depot, but also the international perspective. 50 plus countries, 11,000 transactions per second when you think about payment processing of credit cards, debit cards, gift cards, food stamps across 6 million plus retail locations. We were doing probably over $1 billion of transactions a day just for Walmart alone, I remember. And then to bring together both the international piece, the global piece, and scale, I was at MetLife for 9 years. I started as the chief global technology architect for the company. And about 2017 or so, I was asked by my boss to take a stint in being the CIO for the Latin America business to cover for an exit we recently had. I was only supposed to be there for about 3 months or so, covering until he backfilled the position, but I ended up doing both jobs for about 5 years after that, the chief technology architect and the CIO for the Latin America business. And about 2 years ago, I came over to Aspida, where I'm the CIO for the entire business, reporting to the CEO. We actually have the benefit of not having that legacy boat anchor, as I like to call it. So we're so nimble and so quick in being able to, deliver our projects on time, new products, new digital experiences, and so forth. We can give autonomy. I can give autonomy and empowerment to each of the squads that are working under my purview, so that we can deliver with speed and be nimble in everything we do. The other thing you said, Tessa, is that there have been, some transformations along the way, and AI is just the latest, right? It's the biggest, it's the most recent in people's minds, and they all build upon one another. But if you'd like, I can talk about some of those transformations that I've seen throughout my history.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting because my career isn't as long, but one of the stories I always tell people when they're starting to freak out is I remember working in desktop support and giving people their first computer and what that change looked like and what it meant moving from a typewriter to a computer. So you have been in leadership positions through these technological changes. What have some of those major shifts been throughout your career?
It's a great question. So I guess I won't go all the way back, but I'll go back, let's say, to Citibank um, and the advent of data warehousing, kind of in the mid 90s. And there were, books from Inman and Kimball, I remember, around, dimensional models and so forth. But the key was, how do you take more and more data with the infrastructure we had available back in those days to be able to bring data and analytics, to the business? And we had to figure out, I remember it was such a big deal back then to be able to join tables that have like 1.5 billion rows in one table and a billion rows in another and try to come up with an answer in a number of seconds, right? And we had to figure out ways to do that and to load all the information from all the credit card transactions that were happening across the various brands. So that was one. I think the advent of data warehousing and dimensional models and the ability to do things that we nerds call star schemas and so forth to be able to support that. I think another big one that happened while I was at the Home Depot was virtualization. Companies like VMware came to the fore, and we wanted to squeeze out every bit of efficiency that we could out of every server we had in the data center. There were a lot of things that were running somewhat idle, and virtualization allowed us to run a lot of workloads on the same servers, right? And this is well before cloud, right? So we were in a world where we had to run things in the data center. And then certainly right after that was the drive toward cloud and containerization, right? And the beginnings of things that became, AWS and Microsoft Azure and GCP, Google's cloud and so forth. I think that that was another big push. Folks originally thought it was just about cost save, right? When you talk about big businesses, but a lot of it was efficiency and speed. And I believe actually in many cases that sometimes speed is more important than the cost save because you're getting after more revenue in some cases for some of these companies. After cloud and container, I'd say some of the software-based things that were coming were service-oriented architecture and microservices, where you could start, slicing out pieces of capabilities and sharing them across various systems. Then there were methodology changes like the move from waterfall to agile, where instead of saying, you know what, I need to know everything about this project, what it's going to cost, and what benefits it's going to bring me before I start the first part of the requirements and design, right? And knowing everything before you do anything is the antithesis to where we are now with agile methodology, where you do something before you know everything, right? And you work in an iterative fashion. I'm really proud that all the teams here that I have in Aspida are driving with very nimble, agile processes. We just moved to on our digital front ends weekly releases now, as opposed to where we were with biweekly releases. But the point is that you have to actually balance kind of the risk and the reward and the ability to get something out into production that's low risk and always thinking progress over perfection in those spaces. And that's what the move to agile has taught us. Um, and then to be able to move quickly and keep everyone collaborating correctly, it's not really a methodology, but a mindset of what we refer to as product aligned teams. And that's where we wanted to build, and some of this goes back to, I think, the Spotify model of like circa 2012 or so, where there were the chapters, which is kind of your homeroom of where you work, the software engineering team or the project management team or the infrastructure team, et cetera. And across those chapters, you'd create squads, which is the work that actually had to be done. And the squads actually were like in our case, we have squads for our client experience, for our operations experience, for our distribution network experience, and a number of other squads that we have. But you bring kind of in a matrix model all of the folks that you need, the developers, the testers, the scrum master, and you bring in business, operations, compliance, so that they're working in a squad. They are working in those, two pizza teams, right? A team small enough that two pizzas can feed them, right? Because smaller teams then have the autonomy within some guardrails to be able to deliver as fast as they can with quality. And, I think being able to do that in those product aligned teams that are focused a lot more narrowly gives us the speed that we want. And then of course now we have AI, right? And AI, like we were saying, it's just the next. I don't want to say that it's a small thing, but we've heard people talk about the advantages AI will bring. People are worried about, oh, are we all going to get laid off because AI is going to do our job? Actually, what we like to say is that everybody now has an assistant. AI is their assistant. You're not going to get replaced by the AI. You're going to get replaced by the person that knows how to use AI to make themselves more productive. In every one of our areas, we promote, the use of generative AI in Aspida, for example. Our software engineers in the team are having AI write code for them. Our legal folks are reviewing contracts and summarizing contracts and also creating new ones. Our HR people are creating job descriptions and so forth. But in zero of those cases is that AI generated thing like going to production, so to speak.
Mhm.
It is always human in the loop, or HIL, as we say in the AI space, where there's going to be the accountability on that human. They have an assistant, but the AI is helping them to go faster and do their thing more productively, not replacing them. So the person that is able to use AI more productively is the value, is the person that's going to derive the most value. And those are the kind of folks that we want thinking ahead. But in no way does AI, concern me in any more than any of those other transformations. It's the current one that we're looking at right now, and there will be several future ones going forward.
Yeah, and when we think about transformations and all the ones that you've mentioned, there's always some hesitancy, some fear. We even with cloud, there was a lot of confusion. I remember being at a marketing conference and talking about our product, and someone asking, "Can that be done in the cloud?" And of course, at the time, yes, we hosted the solution in the cloud, but the feature I was speaking about was on a mobile device, and I like didn't understand what they were asking, but people just started saying the word cloud is solving like every problem out there, and um, now there's not only confusion around like what it can do or what it should do, but fear. When you think about these shifts in the past, how did you navigate like misunderstanding, maybe overhyping of what the solution is capable of, and really bring people around the most effective and productive use of that technology?
That's a great question. I do think that people end up using some of these transformational, you know, eras in technology um, in the form of buzzwords, right? So, oh, do that in the cloud, or
Yeah.
oh, AI can do that, right? And you're right, they're taking things out of context without knowing all the facts. And I think when it comes down to it, like in a company where you're actually going to put something into production that you want to actually build or design, or in the right order there, um, you actually come down to the facts and you create, what does that case look like? You do a little bit of R&D, right? You can play with something, but before you put it into production, because now in production, especially in regulated industries, it has to be right 100% of the time, not 99% of the time. Certain things you can take more risk with, maybe customer experience kinds of things that you're going to experiment with. And you have to always have that kind of risk versus reward perspective. But it reminds me, what we talk about here reminds me of something that Gartner has, um, the hype cycle, which I don't know if you've seen before, right? And everything, new technologies can be plotted across this hype cycle, which it go to the peak of inflated expectations, which is where it kind of starts. It's like the introduction, then the peak of inflated expectations, perfectly put, right? then it all goes through the trough of disillusionment, right? Where people are like, oh, I thought all these great things. It was very hyped up. It was, out of context. People were using it as a buzzword, right? And then you realize to actually make this industrial strength, to put it into production, to work 100% of the time, as opposed to an R&D effort or something you might do in college as a college project, right? Now it has to be something that's industrial and solid, right? So after that trough of disillusionment, there's the slope of enlightenment, right? Where people are starting to learn things and do things better and actually create, processes around stuff so that it works 100% of the time. And then you get to the plateau of productivity. And every technology at a, variety of speeds goes through that. It might take you 10 years to go through that. It might take you 3 years to go through that, right? And I think, we see that the same thing with AI.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, I like when you said the disillusionment part. I think it's important, no matter what seat you're sitting at in a company, that you understand that there is going to be that stage and phase of disillusionment. And the best people or your most productive people, I would say your stars, are those who lean into solutions and lean into hearing and feeling all the feels in that disillusionment phase, but knowing that they can be the person who helps navigate out.
Hmm.
And those who don't, those are the people who will be replaced. If you get stuck in that phase and you don't come out, that's not a great spot.
Yeah, I mean, we want people that are curious, that are always looking out to new solutions or new ways of doing things. We want people that do not have a fear to fail. And by the way, that means that their leadership, like myself and the CEO of my company, my boss, uh, will always have their back, right? Because we want to fail forward, right? Failure is just a step on the way to success, right? That's not my words. I don't remember where I read it one time, but I like it. And I think as long as we're all, driving towards success, testing and learning, right? Making mistakes and adjusting, understanding risk versus reward of, where can we test and learn in a safe way, right? Then we're going to kind of get to the place where we need to be, in a much more logical and, correct way that's going to give the most value for our business. I mean, after all, we're here not to just experiment with toys, right? And have fun, right? But we're here to drive a business, right? With revenue and driving costs down and trying to come up with a way to do things better so that a company can be successful or a society can be successful or humanity can be successful, right? We should be here for a larger cause than just the fun of working and tinkering with our little piece. And that means that you have to have those folks in the company that are curious and figuring out the ways of kind of bridging between just the technology for technology's sake and the purposes that it could have out in the world, right? I think those are the kinds of folks that we're always looking for.
Yeah, I agree. And what's sort of been an interesting pattern that I've seen across businesses that we work with, and this just came up yesterday from a large client, and they said, it's really our senior leaders who are struggling with adoption. And it, when we listen to their feedback as to what the concerns are, why they won't try using the tools,
Hmm.
why they might not feel the need to even tell clients or their end customers and publish out that they are using AI or that AI is a part of the process. Um, I feel like there's a communication gap. And there's like people have raised their hand and are in the know, but what are some ways that you've addressed like communication challenges? And I feel like this might be amplified by the news cycle. Like they're hearing a lot
Hmm.
of they're hearing information about AI 24/7, but sometimes there's this gap, especially senior leaders are, they're busy, they're overwhelmed. They are accountable for the
Hmm.
business success. Like, how can we bridge that communication as to where the business is driving and prioritizing technological change compared to what their entire career has told them or the way they've operated their entire career and what the news is saying?
Number one, innovation is everybody's job. I've been in companies that have formed like innovation teams. I remember once a colleague of mine and I went over to the fancy new glass-walled office, which is where the innovation team was housed. And we kind of looked in the window and we said, "Hey, let's watch them innovate." And it was just kind of a joke, right? Because innovation isn't a team, it's part of everybody's job, right?
Yep.
Invention is when you invent something new that didn't exist before. Innovation is doing something better or different with stuff that you already got, right? And that's kind of a big difference. And so therefore, everybody who is in the middle of working on something, whether they are managing people, whether they are operating the phones, whether they are handling, claims or incoming, issues from customers, whether they are, building software, they have the ability to innovate. So that needs to be top down, right? The inquisitiveness, the curiosity. Another thing that's important, I think, and I've seen this in some companies, is at the exec level, we sometimes can suffer from what I have called high and mighty disease, right? You need to bring everything to me and, share it with me and take me through it like I'm a 3-year-old or something like that. And that doesn't need to be the case, right? Instead, the folks that are at the top of the company need to be thinking, I loved it. When I was at the Home Depot, we talked about the upside down org chart, right? The CEO's at the bottom, right? The execs are at the next layer, and it goes all the way up to the individual contributors at the top, and then eventually there was the stores and the customers in the stores, but customers are always at the top. And the idea is that you're bearing the burden of the weight of the organization above you, right? And
Mhm.
you're responsible for everything, right? They are you and you are them. So you need to be able to be inquisitive and to be able to talk to anybody in the organization and try to challenge them to think differently. So I think instead of being fearful of the thing, like back in you talk about the news cycle, back many years ago, it was, oh, he's on an airplane and he's reading the in-flight magazine, right? Because
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
where the article was. Hey, what's this thing on cloud, right? Or, now, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Tessa, and it was like, it's like you get it on social media, right? You get it on your news feeds and so forth. And so, as opposed to fear, though, it needs to be curiosity, is the thing I'll continually say. And to allow others to be curious, to test and learn. Again, not to just go play with toys because this is a business and we're here to, ultimately, make a profit or be successful for some purpose that we have. But make sure that folks are using that curiosity to learn things, to better something, to innovate. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of my answer to your question there.
I absolutely love that answer. And I'm going to ask a question to help myself
Yeah.
because I lead the innovation team at ModUp, and
Hmm.
it is a team, but instead of having it be like a strategic business unit, we have it as a practice group. And I always say that we're in service of all of the strategic business units. But what I like more about your statement, innovation is everyone's job, is inherent in it being my job is accountability, that I
Hmm.
am responsible for how we are changing the way we work and how we're going to market and how we're serving our clients and customers.
Hmm.
Are there, have you ever used any types of shared goals or shared accountability metrics to kind of help people embrace innovation being a part of their job?
Absolutely. So number one, and the first thing I did at Aspida and what I had done in prior companies is to make sure that as a senior leadership team in IT, we would always have a strategic session. We'd get away from the office for a day and a half and make sure that we're talking about the big elephants in the room that we never get a chance to talk about because, I love who is it? Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of the Team. It talks
Yeah.
you got to build trust, right? That's the first thing. The absence of trust um, prevents you from having the next thing up in the triangle of five things, which I think is conflict, right? Because you want to have productive conflict. Without being able to have conflict, I can come to you, Tessa, and say, I have a conflict with you. We have to have trust to be able to make that productive, right? And without that conflict, you can't get to commitment, which then gets you to accountability and then gets you results. I think I remembered all five of those. But the point is to get to that trust, you have to have that trust amongst the leadership to be able to promote that across the team so you don't get the silos. So you have to have shared goals. And it starts with me with purpose. So our IT purpose, right, is two strategic imperatives. And that's been the same for me since MetLife and into here, maybe with some different words, but like our two imperatives here are to deliver innovative technology capabilities to the business. And the second one is to maintain a safe, secure, and reliable operating environment. And I also want that to be everyone's job. There's not the haves and the have-nots, that some people get to do sexy work and other people need to do support work and so forth. That's a part of the squads too. One of the mantras of the squads is you build it, you support it. You don't throw it over the fence to some maintenance organization. And everybody needs to have that buy-in and that skin in the game. So then we created a vision and a mission, right? Which is basically to give our customers and partners the world's best-in-class digital insurance customer experience. That's, with the context of our company. And then some values. And I threw out probably 6 values to the team, but I don't want to dictate them, right? We talked about it in this first strategy meeting. And then we came up with something that was consolidated and able to be, remembered by most. And those include things like customer centricity, where we're infatuated with providing tangible value for our internal and external customers. Cultivating inspired and versatile talent, right? We want to inspire our people to fulfill their highest potential, and we value everyone's opinions and ideas. And then lastly, collaboration. We work cross-functionally as one team, that's capital one team, right? And cultivate a culture of trust. That's kind of the where we start. But then we ultimately get to shared goals. Now, our company and in other companies I've been in have had that goal setting, right? And it gets better year over year, right? Within the regime of the leadership, as you have various categories of goals and the parts that everybody takes in. And I always try to drive the leaders within my organization to make sure they tie the work of the individual contributors back to kind of how are they, and why are they doing this. I loved at the Home Depot where we had to work in the stores. You're in IT, you go work in the stores. Feel what it's like to walk around on the pavement on that hard concrete for 10 hours and having people walk up to you looking for stuff. And then maybe there's a tech thing that's not working, right? How do you feel, right? Because it's hearts and minds, right? But like in our insurance company, we have 6 categories of goals that we've aligned to. And they're not just, the nerdy propeller head stuff that we love to have fun with. I think nerds are cool, by the way. But like the one is fortify the technology ecosystem, right? And that is all the stuff around making sure we can scale as we continue our explosive growth as a new insurance company, just 3 years old with fantastic sales. Enhance and expand the product portfolio. So we need to build tech to be able to sell those products and service those products. Drive operational excellence. I always say, let's send operations team to the beach, right? And what are you talking about, Alex? Well, what I mean is let's automate everything that they do. Let's continue to talk to them, be with them, understand where their problems are, and automate, automate, automate. I want everybody, and then let's send ourselves to the beach. Let's automate everything we do, right? Not just through AI, but through automation, right? After all, automation is a big piece of what IT delivers. And then we have the 2 last ones are delivering an exceptional digital experience for all stakeholders, right? Which is where we believe as Aspida is the special sauce, right? Our experience is fantastic, bar none. And then the last one is to continue investing in our employees and reward success, which, it's pretty self-evident. But yes, those kinds of shared goals get people kind of in the same place, making sure those align, like my IT goals align perfectly with those of the company. Because we really, at the end of it, the most important thing is that everybody in the company should play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the back. So,
Yeah, that is, I love that answer. I know I've already said that, but it's true because everyone can rally around the purpose and the vision of the company. But one concept that you keep bringing to the forefront is the word experience. And I think when people start to look at how do we roll down our vision and our purpose into what we're actually going to do. Earlier in the interview, you said the tribes and the squads, a lot of the things that they were solving were around the experience. And then in this example, we're talking about what are those shared goals? It's all around the experience. And I think not only is it everyone should be playing for what's on the front, but it's also what's on the front is for the experience you want to deliver to your
mhm.
end customers and clients. And that's another thing that can really start to bring people together and people can start to see themselves in those shared objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have, some experienced squads. We have some squads that are associated with like capabilities or platforms, right? So we need those folks that are handling those spaces. And we're trying to narrowly focus those teams so that they can go fast with quality. But the biggest experiences we have in our company are the ones for, we call them the producers, which are in the distribution chain. These are the folks that are selling the annuities, the insurance products. And then another experience is the client experience. And this is talking about the full end-to-end experience, not just the portal the client logs into, but the entire experience they get in an omni-channel kind of way. Because they may end up calling the call center at some point, and they have a full journey that they go through. And we kind of analyze those. We also have our product team. I have a digital product team in my organization as well, and they spend time with distributors. They listen to distributors. They listen to customers. So in the same way I was talking about, you work in the stores, right, at the Home Depot as an IT person to know what it's like. We want people here to be working in the contact center, right, with operations side by side to listen to the phone calls. For folks to go to the distributor trips that we have to various distribution network partners that we have to understand, what do they need in the future so that we can add things to our roadmap. And it's actually the biggest part of our special sauce. And a lot of the testimonials that we get at Aspida is that we have, the best customer experience or the best stakeholder experience, whether you're an ops person, a distributor, a third party, a partner or a client. And it's because we spend so much time on that. And that's special sauce because digital is something that, believe it or not, is still breaking its way into the insurance industry, right? Banking, long time ago, retail, long time ago. Insurance, we sometimes have to push people to get away from paper. I don't keep a slice of paper, sheet of paper, or a pencil or pen anywhere near, my desk. And I do that on purpose, right? Because that's part of our belief as a company. We don't want paper. We want everything to be digital.
I will say, working on lots of different industries, many industries are still catching up to digital. And you mentioned earlier that at Aspida, it's nice to be somewhere where you don't have to address all the technical debt. But the truth is, like some of the largest companies in the world are having to deal with technical debt with old legacy systems and ways of doing things. What advice would you give to them to be able to adopt this tribe squad agile mentality in order not to fall behind of this technological wave?
Yeah, so for the larger companies that I've been at, a lot of times you have the legacy systems that are in place, and you're trying to build new things, and sometimes you say, "Hey, we could build that product, in 3 months," and then you realize, "Oh, we have to integrate to that one system that has 30% of our customer base. Oh, and I forgot the other thing that we have over here." And a lot of times it's just through growth of a company, um, or amalgamation of acquisitions sometimes that you bring in different systems that have to be integrated, you create complexity. The number one thing is to try to unwind that complexity. And I know it's very difficult. There's replace all in one shot, which becomes a very slow waterfall project that doesn't deliver value for a year or two. There's the wrap, tap, and scrap that we've used in some companies where you're wrapping services around various places, various pieces of your various legacy systems to pull certain capabilities out. And then you can build user experiences on top of those new areas. And eventually those legacy systems would attrit out. It's different by industry, right? Insurance, whole life insurance is for your whole life. So in some cases you have systems that are out there where the code is all, the business rules are all in code. And it's going to cost quite a bit to have contractors come in or your own folks go in and go through all that code and pull those business rules out. We didn't have business rules management systems like we do today and have the ability to configure those things back when some of those legacy systems were built. Uh, but the other thing I would say is to make sure architecturally you have a couple things that are going on. I always stick to my core 7 for architecture, which is having architectural principles for making your decisions, technology standards so that you can, consolidate your technology stack, make the place simpler, architectural roadmaps so that you know where you're going and people agree to it and the investments you make are in line and planned out. Some other things like reference architectures and prescribed technology stacks so that you have standards around how you build things, keeping an eye on emerging technologies and vendors and then architectural governance so that you can actually govern the things you're doing and keep it in place. The thing we've been able to benefit from here at Aspida is that I moved from, consolidate the stack of technologies and trying to drive simplicity. Here I say protect the stack, right? So many
Yeah.
times you can have a new exec or a new leader come in and say, hey, we used to use XYZ tool at this other company. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Let's bring it into this company. And you look at that category of technology, you say, well, we already have one of those. Well, this one's better, trust me, right? The person wants it maybe in one way because they're used to that from their prior company and they're going to have a leg up because they know how to use it better than anybody else in the new company and now they make a name for themselves, right? But in the spirit of playing for the name on the front of the jersey and not the back, we should be looking at those categories of technology and saying we already have one of those. If you're going to bring one in, the architectural principle is one in, one out. If you bring this one in, when are we going to retire the other one? Because we want to maintain simplicity. So to me here at Aspida, it's been about protect the stack so that we can maintain no legacy boat anchor and move at the speed of light.
I love it. Well, that is all the time we have. This has been a fascinating conversation. And the takeaways that I hope all the listeners caught were one, that I'm going to repeat this statement to everyone. Innovation is everybody's job. And you've provided so many insights on how we can use best practice frameworks, agile, creating those cross-functional tribes and squads to rally around our purpose, that name on the front, and come together to move faster. Whether you're a small company now or an enterprise that needs to chunk it out and take one thing at a time, but know that getting through that disillusionment, that disappointment phase, is so important in keeping what you're doing visible to maintain trust internally and with all of your stakeholders. So, Alex, thank you so much. I feel like you're going to have to come back at some point so we can just keep this going. And if people are interested in reaching out to you directly, where can they find you?
They can see me on LinkedIn, Alex Seidita, and they should be able to reach me through that. I will also be in Las Vegas in October at the InsurTech Connect, doing a presentation. Um, it's called Beyond the Build: Sustaining Tech Velocity Through Culture, Collaboration, and Control. So those are a couple ways.
That's fantastic. I've never been as interested in insurance as I am now. Uh, that's awesome that you're bringing, really efficient and highly productive, valuable experiences. So be sure to check that out. We'll have the name of that conference on our website where you can find all Leader Generation episodes. It's at modop.com, modop.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Alex, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.